the unknown. For thousands of years, man has been accumulating knowledge, yet he remains essentially a stranger to himself. He has crossed every frontier, navigated every ocean, yet he dares not probe into his own psyche. For all of his venturing to take a giant step across space to a place called Moon, he hardly dares to take the initial steps into himself. Yet there are those who do dare to see beyond sight, to hear beyond hearing, to breach boundaries, to leap beyond frontiers. In Paris, a man demonstrates the movement of objects at a distance. A 14-year-old boy in Tokyo creates a picture on film through the power of his mind. A Russian emigre scientist attempts what we call levitation, what he calls partial death. In Wisconsin, a man walks barefoot across a blazing bed of coals. In the Philippines, a psychic surgeon performs an operation with his bare hands, without anesthetic or knife. In the Midwestern United States, can a woman send healing to a patient at a distance? Rembrandt, Matisse, Gauguin, and other great artists, all dead, continue their painting through this Brazilian medium. In Cardiff, Wales, a hypnotist regresses a woman back to a life she lived 800 years ago. These are some of the men and women who are probing into the magic of man's being. I'm Bart Lánkasτερ. I invite you to join me to participate in this inquiry into the miracle of ourselves, to explore the unknown. What you're about to see is what we saw, and what we saw we believe to be the truth. Even so, for all of our efforts to authenticate every occurrence that is presented here, it's entirely possible that at some point we might have been deceived. It's hardly likely. Nevertheless, it is a possibility. So we ask you to look, judge for yourself. Make up your own mind. We've come to Paris to visit with Jean-Pierre Girard, a man whose credentials are extraordinary. He has demonstrated his unusual abilities before the members of the prestigious French Academy of Science. This young Frenchman is one of the very few psychic subjects who can produce repeatedly and on command psychokinetic phenomena while being physiologically controlled by electrodes attached to various parts of his body. With him now is a cardiologist, Dr. Osterman, who will be monitoring his reactions. The glass came from the hotel, bought by a member of our staff. The lipstick belongs to another member of our staff. This is Alan Newman, veteran television producer who has had many years' experience as a communicator in the field of psychic phenomena. The bar is made of titanium aluminum alloy, which is used in the construction of the Concorde supersonic aircraft because of its lightness and strength.
I think the first thing to say is that Jean-Pierre Girard appears to be a quite normal human being. But the phenomena we could constate during the experiment were extraordinary. And I think that it's very important for medical research to understand what kind of physical change can appear around such phenomena. At the beginning of the experiment, his heart rate was 105. Then, a few minutes before, his heart rate jumps to 125, and then progressively to 160. A few seconds before the objects move. What we can say is that we can nearly predict when the phenomenon can arrive, because there are a lot of physiological parameters which change before the phenomenon appears.
Jean-Pierre says that just before something is going to happen, he sees it as though it were already happening. It's as though he were dislocated in time, and for a moment he can jump into the future. But to do this, he must let go of himself. He must release all accumulated tension and effort of trying. At just that moment, the bar bends, or the object moves. There may be a correlation between this and the sharply rising EKG just before the phenomena. It's important that we continue to study the physiological as well as the psychological characteristics of people such as Jean-Pierre. We are interested in the extension of human potential, varying dimensions of creativity that we all may be capable of and that hitherto have been relatively unexplored. For example, any photography expert will tell you there are a lot of things which can affect photographic film. Light exposes film, of course, but heat, pressure, chemicals, and various types of radiation, like X-rays, will also mark film. Many of us who have been around film labs have heard stories about people who seem to fog film just by being near it. Apparently they emit some sort of unknown radiation, which ruins the film. Instead of being studied scientifically, they usually get fired. However, that situation is different with a Japanese boy who seems to have control over this energy. He even seems to direct it. And what is more astounding, he appears to create pictures with it. His name is Masawaki Kyoto. With him is Professor Mayauchi, a physicist, and Mr. Fukuda, a photographic expert. They believe that Masawaki is creating light energy, and he can somehow project it into a sealed black box. Professor Mayauchi built equipment to test this idea. The light-tight metal box has 9 photoelectric cells mounted on the inside top surface. A film pack can be inserted into the box. Then each film can be pulled out individually, and it automatically develops immediately. The first film in the pack is always used as a control to make sure that the box is properly closed and that no light is getting in around the edges. Masawaki says that he needs to be able to visualize the image. And then he concentrates on the box and lets his energy or tension build up. When he feels ready, he lets go of the energy suddenly by saying the Japanese equivalent of pow. Each of the light-sensitive photoelectric cells inside the box is attached by an electric wire to one pen on this 9-channel chart recorder. As soon as Masawaki creates light inside the box, the pens of the chart recorder show the position and duration of the light strike. This is verified again when the film is pulled out and developed. Masawaki can usually make streaks and even patterns on the film. At the beginning of the experiment, he was asked to place a light strike on the lower left-hand side of the picture. And he did it.
This is our camera, and this is our film. Masawaki is seeing both for the first time. I'm inserting the film.
Now I'm pulling the tab, and I'm handing it to the boy. The lens is capped. That's right. What picture will be on here? Tokyo Tower, all right. Let's see what we have. 30 seconds we should know. I kind of helped on that one. Tokyo Tower. You're looking at the Tokyo Tower. It's a landmark. It was the Tokyo Tower that Masawaki projected for us. We thought you'd like to see the real thing and compare.
When we look at a photograph, we take for granted the process that placed the picture upon the paper. The subject being photographed and the snap of a shutter that allows the lens to project an image upon the negative from which the print is made. Now ponder. Creating such a picture without a camera at all, using neither shutter nor lens, as Masawaki has done in the picture of the Tokyo Tower. Masawaki claims to be able to place an image on film simply by creating the same image in his mind, projecting what amounts to a figment of his imagination onto the tangible reality of a photograph. Well, if the mind can do this, what more can it do? With us is a Russian emigre scientist whom we brought from another country. Recently, a Los Angeles Times reporter, Robert Toth, was arrested by the KGB on a Moscow street while being handed a 25-page memorandum on parapsychology. Mr. Toth was released only after considerable protests by the United States government. Now, what can be so secret about parapsychology? A page-one story in the New York Times that same week quoted a Soviet physicist who described doing secret work in parapsychology for what appears to be military and police purposes. We were able to locate that physicist and to arrange for him to come to us for filming. We met in England, where Alan Newman interviewed him. He is Soviet scientist Dr. August Stern, who spent 3 years in a secret Siberian laboratory trying to find a physical basis for psychic energy.
Dr. Stern, what was the nature of your work?
It was an attempt of physicists to find the description and the law of brain functioning.
Where did you work?
I work in Siberian Academy of branch of the Academy of Science of the USSR in Novosibirsk, near Novosibirsk, Akademgorodok.
This is a city in Siberia?
Yes, it's a special scientific city which was created.
Were there many people working with you in this laboratory?
About 50.
50. Was there a considerable budget?
Yes, the budget was too considerable, I would say. It include millions of rubles.
Millions of rubles?
Yes.
Was the lab visited by the KGB?
I think it was created by KGB.
You believe it was a KGB creation?
Yes, because it was very much isolated from scientific community, even in the center. It was some kind of not really scientific organization where people freely communicate and expose their results.
What was the purpose of the KGB?
Purpose is power.
Now, can you give me some kind of example of the work you did at the laboratory?
It was research of sending telepathical signal, and subject of the experiments was given order on distant order, let's say hypnotic order, or just simple order to move or to change the position. And at the same time he would be observed with the help of television without being informed.
So then these were experiments in hypnosis?
It would be make the area less than it was, because it was not only hypnotic influence, just...
Now, does this mean that, for example, he might have instructions to open up a letter, or...?
It's could, in principle, include any kind of instruction, even which is contradictory to the person. It's some kind of violation of his liberty.
Are you telling me that it was possible to give them orders contrary to their will?
Yes, of course. This was perhaps the main purpose, because here the influence could achieve the maximum.
And then the purpose of such experiments, though, could be utilized then by the military?
Yes, this is a danger, and why we are speaking now today.
Dr. Stern, why did you leave Russia?
I did not want to participate in this process. I prefer to be free, at least, by my own.
All right, now, tell us about what we're going to try to do in the next room.
This phenomena is, if we will look for the definition, could be defined as a partial death. We usually move in 3 dimensions. What you call levitation is actually movement in 5 dimensions. I don't call it levitation. I call it penta in Latin, which stands for 5. It means displacement in the 5th dimension.
This is Professor John Hastad, physicist from London University. He has been monitoring Dr. Stern for us. Professor Hastad, what is this machine and how does it work?
Well, this measures pressure. That is the pressure of the air inside the rubber mattress on which he was lying. Of course, he was lying on a mirror on the rubber mattress, right?
Yes.
Now, here is where our ghost gets on, and straight away, or at least a bit later, we see these rapid variations. Now, don't pay much attention to those, because that's the wriggling about. He was really wriggling and moving in a way which is almost impossible to do, but it doesn't mean his weight was getting less just because the things are moving about. What we're looking for is any bumps on this line. For example, there are some bumps here, and they're not more than about a pound, but I don't know quite how I would explain those bumps, except as a change in his weight for a period of 5 seconds. That's very difficult to do physically, although it's very easy to make these quick. Now, there are some big ones down here. And the one I'm looking for, that's not a... Yes, that's an interesting signal. That really must be several pounds, 2 or 3 pounds weight for about 5 seconds.
What are the implications of this?
Well, if we get really big signals, and if people do really get off the ground, as there have been reports that they have, then this is very important for physics. There must be forces or something that we don't know how they arise at all. So this is an important experiment to do.
This phenomena is, if we will look for the definition, could be defined as a partial death.
We live in a restless, inquiring age. People from every walk of life, from the fortune teller who reads palms, to the theologians, to the most highly advanced scientists who work in laboratories in the most secret corners of every nation, all dabble in immortality. Seek to draw aside the curtain to uncover, however glimmering, bits of information about the unknown. Of course, we doubt. We remain cynical, for otherwise we'd be stunned. Our minds would reel. But suppose the phenomena we have witnessed turns out to be true. One inevitably wonders to what use men will put this remarkable knowledge. Will it be used like the neutron bomb as a military weapon? Or will it be used to enhance the community of man? As we travel about the world, we've become increasingly aware of alternative methods of healing. What are considered orthodox techniques in one society are considered peculiar in another. There are many within our medical profession who are exploring other methods in an attempt to increase our knowledge and to further the healing arts. We believe that the value of a healing technique should not be measured by where it is practiced, but only by how effective it is. A word of warning, please. If you are affected by the sight of blood, I strongly advise you to look away during the following sequence.
We are in Baguio City, high in the mountains, about 200 miles north of Manila.
Here, unorthodox healing is practiced, often strange and bizarre. With me is Dr. Norman Shealy, neurosurgeon and director of the Pain and Health Rehabilitation Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin, USA. Dr. Shealy, why are you here?
Alan, I'm here to observe healing, because suffering does not always respond to conventional medicine.
Another scientist observing is Dr. Elmer Green, a psychophysiologist from the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Kansas. The healer is June LeBeau. He first performed psychic surgery 7 years ago. June LeBeau is diagnosing a patient. He holds an ordinary sheet in front of him. An assistant, in this case myself, holds a second sheet behind the patient. With the 2 sheets in place, June LeBeau claims he can X-ray the patient. Diagnosis complete. The surgery begins. Psychic surgery is a technique in which the healer appears to part the skin with his bare hands using no instruments. The patient claims to feel little or no pain. Fingers are inserted into his wound to remove whatever may be causing the illness. The wound is closed with cotton. There is no scar.
No pain, it's all right. Keep it going. Cotton, quick.
With me is Tony Araneda, graduate of Notre Dame who holds a doctorate from Oxford and who is currently president of the Philippine Society of Psychical Research. Well, how are you today?
I feel very well, Alan, after that operation.
What was wrong, Tony?
Nothing really very deep, except that I had blurred vision. And I thought that that eye operation would help clear it up a bit, which in fact it did.
Did you feel much pain?
No pain at all. I kept telling myself there would be no harm coming to me. And I'm positive nothing happened in terms of damage. In fact, there was a positive effect in terms of clearer vision.
Well, that's good. To the best of your knowledge, how many healers practice psychic surgery or materializations here in the Philippines?
I have personally witnessed about 30 material operators in this country.
Tony, why does psychic surgery take place here in the Philippines?
Personally, I would say that the role of Philippine healers, in a way, is to provide material evidence to the materialist world of the existence of a non-material world.
Tony wasn't the only patient yesterday. There was another patient. I was that patient. While I was holding the sheet that Brother June used to x-ray Tony Araneta, Brother June said he could also see through me. When Tony's surgery was complete, Brother June said he would have to perform surgery on me. It was necessary, he said, because without it, I would have no more than 3 months to live. Brother June spoke to us before the filming began.
This is really very hard case. It is a block of mucus which covers it with a 3 spots, with the 3 dots near the heart. This mucus should be removed because about 2 or 3 months, this mucus will cover the heart, and that will start the weakness of the circulation near the bronchial tube. I have to work in here. I would like to have a little silence, so I have to concentrate very hard. So as the patient, once I might not see him tomorrow or any time, I want that this man whom I meet today will be satisfied and be cured.
And then this is what happened.
Dark.
No.
Dr. Shealy comments.
I have drained abscesses that looked exactly like this. If I put my knife into them, it would come out just the way that did. Just the way yours did. It spurted out. It's like an abscess that's been inside. And a huge quantity.
It hurts, huh? Because this is the draining, huh? I have to drain. The mucus is the most delicate case.
It looks like a pus, really, to what we would call an infection. Worse than mucus.
A year, not only 1 year, 2 years. Maybe that is about 8 years or 9 years, 10 years.
May we analyze this?
Sure.
I've had what I call an allergic throat for the past 10 years. I do not smoke, and I have no history of heart disease. I have been complaining for the past week about a cold or a sinus condition, which I felt was aggravated by the change of climate. Now, no one in the crew knew this, and certainly Brother June did not know this.
That's quite a show. I mean, a demonstration. I don't know what I mean.
Well,
it's remarkable.
The real term there is not a demonstration or a show. It's a good feeling.
A miracle.
Now, as to what I felt during the surgery, I felt considerable pain long before pain was discussed by Brother June and myself. I felt the breaking of a piece of tissue or membrane or whatever inside my head. I heard the sound inside my head. I felt the trickling of liquid down the side of my neck. It smelled bad. All material taken from me during the surgical procedure will be brought by Dr. Norm Shealy back to the United States for further examination. This morning, my throat hurts.
We are in La Crosse, Wisconsin, at the Pain and Health Rehabilitation Center. With me is the director, Dr. Norman Shealy. Dr. Shealy, what exactly was it that was taken from Alan Newman's neck?
It was pus, mixed with a tiny bit of blood.
And was it real pus and blood?
Yes, indeed. We had it analyzed in our pathology laboratory.
And what has happened since then?
Well, we have arranged since then to bring the healer, June LeBeau, here to La Crosse to do some further work.
Just tell me if it hurts, huh?
It has the odor of blood even from this distance.
I would have to say that it looks to me like it's some form of materialization. Some of the psychic surgeons agree on that. And they feel that the materialization is for the purpose of convincing the patient that something important has happened, then the patient can heal themselves.
Then as a scientist, would you say that you have to regard this psychic surgery with some respect, as it were, and not something that's totally and completely a fake?
Well, I would regard it as something that is totally not a fake in the cases which can be verified with cameras, etc. There are many fake occurrences, maybe, but when they are genuine, the question is not, is it happening? The question is, how does it happen?
Dr. Sheely, can you tell us exactly what happened?
Well, I don't think we can explain this from a medical point of view or in traditional scientific terminology. What we can say is that this seems beyond any reasonable doubt to be real blood, it's human blood, and what it looks like to me is materialization. That is, as if this blood were actually being physically materialized out of the etheric body, is what the psychics themselves would often call it. And from a metaphysical point of view, that seems to be the understanding of many people in this country.
What is your whole general feeling from a point of view of whether it is real, whether it is not real?
Well, I think it's any question that what we're seeing is a real physical phenomena. Our problem is to try to define it in terms of physics as we understand it now.
I see.
What it means to me is that we just have to study these phenomena in much greater detail because there are alternate realities.
There are 48,000 Americans visiting the Philippines annually. A goodly percentage come for healing. With such large numbers of people, there is undoubtedly fraud. It's important to remember that if you've seen one genuine healing, it doesn't mean that they are all genuine. And conversely, one fraudulent healing does not mean that they are all fraudulent. We believe that the healer we observed, June LeBeau, is genuine. We also believe that this phenomenon should be scrutinized and studied. There's much we can learn. We're observing Dr. Elmer Green of the Manager Foundation as he monitors a healer-patient experiment. Dr. Green is researching the effect of spiritual healing administered not at the bedside, but over a distance.
Dr. Green, what's taking place here?
Well, when Dr. Sheely and we were in the Philippines watching the psychic surgeons, a discussion came up as to whether or not it would be possible to heal also at a distance as well as close-up. And we decided at the time that when we got back to the United States, we would set up an experiment and try to find out. And here we are now in La Crosse, Wisconsin at the St. Francis Hospital running the experiment. Dr. Sheely got in touch with a well-known spiritual healer, Olga Worrell, and we have her here. She's wired up to all our physiological records 30 feet away, and we have a patient 30 feet away in another room. They're not connected in any way, but their cables, their wires that have their physiological signals come into this room to these machines. And we can see whether there's any simultaneous behavior between these two people, which of course is what we want to find out. This channel up here is a brainwave channel of the healer. This is the left brainwave and this is the right brainwave, and we have identical channels from the patient. Left brainwave and right brainwave. And here we have from the healer respiration, from the patient respiration. Here's the healer's heart rate, here's the patient's heart rate. And over here we have a channel that shows whenever the healer speaks, we get a little blip. Right here we have a temperature record. This is the left hand and here's the right hand of the healer. Here's the left hand and the right hand of the patient. And then the next one we have is the patient's voice event marker. Anytime they speak, we get a record here. And the last things down here are the skin voltages of the healer, the skin voltage of the patient. Okay. Is everything okay?
Right over here.
All right, I'm going to call them now.
Okay, ready.
Okay, everything looks all right down here.
It's okay to start right now.
I'm now going to attempt to project into the patient's room and to administer absent healing. I'm placing my hands on the shoulders of the patient And I feel that there is a great deal of pain and discomfort down the spinal column, and especially around the throat area. I'm placing my hand now toward the throat on the chest, and I feel that there is an inflammation of some sort right in that area. I also feel that it's very sore and tender. I will hold my hands there for a few moments.
Apparently he's gone into some kind of a deep state because his breathing has changed completely, and I think Dr. Sheely has signaled us that he's in some kind of a trance.
My hands now are going down to the patient's stomach and the small of his back. I feel that he has a problem with his stomach.
She's working on his stomach now.
I also feel that the patient is a smoker because it's with effort that I am able to project the healing energy. I'm now taking my hands away, and this is the end of the absent healing session.
She's taking her hands away right there. His breathing changed right
Okay,
there.
that's 629.
Well, how do you feel, Lee?
Great.
Was an interesting experience?
Oh, I feel warm. My neck is just soaking wet. Had lights going off in my head. My whole body was just tingling like little needles sticking into it.
And I got a signal from Dr. Sheely apparently at that time. Did it happen all at once?
Yes, it just took hold of my body and just raised my whole body backwards. I couldn't control it. And then when I was coming out of it, I wanted to open my eyes and just scream. The sensation was so great that it's indescribable. Man.
Okay, how about right now, the pain that was in your leg? Is it back, or is it still gone?
No, it's, there's still a tingling in there. It's still tingling.
I see. Well, I'm sure that you're curious as to what happened with Lee.
Right.
Well, I can tell you, the first thing I can tell you is the fact that he produced a continuous brainwave pattern that showed he was deeply relaxed. And the most interesting thing that occurred was at a time when Olga was focusing, just when she began to focus her attention on him, he suddenly, I can't exactly describe what happened, but his brain waves went off the paper record, indicating that he'd had a huge physiological change of some kind. They finally came back on the record, and that's when then you signaled to me, saying that something had happened, and apparently this is the time at which then his head moved back. What this means to us is the fact that this simultaneous event between the patient and the healer supports the hypothesis that we started out with in the Philippines, that it was possible to transmit healing energy at a distance.
We seem to have been given evidence of a unique energy capable of healing, which can be transmitted by the healer over some distance. Now, what does this mean to us? Could we become healers? Could we too broadcast healing energy? Or could this be another form of prayer? We are about to see a man demonstrate the unusual feat of firewalking, an art generally associated with the exotic East. The Guinness Book of World Records states that the highest temperature ever endured by a firewalker, as measured by an electric barometer, is 1,494 degrees Fahrenheit. The man who performs this incredible feat is Vernon Craig. With him is Dr. David Walker, who holds a doctorate in psychology and is presently with Northern Lights College in British Columbia. Dr. Walker, what is that you have in your hand?
It's an electronic pyrometer used for measuring temperature. I was using it to measure the temperature of the fire.
What is the temperature of the fire?
1,107 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, 1,107 degrees. It's mighty hot.
It's hot.
Yes. And now, Vernon Craig. Dr. Walker, how does he do it? Doesn't he feel any pain?
Well, pain is something that we are beginning to understand to be related to the amount of disorganization in the brain. And somehow he maintains an organized brain by this warm-up that he does.
Well, can you give me an example of what you...
Well, an organized brain, I mean, for example, if I were to be badly injured in an explosion in this building, my arm broken, burning timbers lying across me, that would be a painful stimulus. But if I looked over and I saw my wife lying on the ground, unconscious, amongst this debris, then I would get up, not experience pain, and drag her from the building. Now, that's what I mean about organization, except he does it without this love or external stimulus. He just does it on his own.
But if you were in an explosion, and as you say, if burning timbers were on you, you'd be burned, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Well, now, were the bottom of his feet burned?
Well, no, they weren't. And this is the incredible thing about this demonstration that we've witnessed. Somehow, his brain, his mind, with its organization, does something to his feet, and they are protected from the fire.
But you really don't know what exactly that is?
No, that is outside of our comprehension right now.
Vernon, that was quite a remarkable feat. How do you feel?
Quite good.
Dr. Walker was explaining something about how you about this and how you apparently don't feel any pain. But I still don't understand why you didn't burn your feet. Are they burned?
No, as you can see, I have no...
May I?
Yes, go ahead. Be my guest. Get some of the dirt off. There are no burns.
Then how do you manage to do this?
It deals with the mind and training of the mind.
Do you know where you get this particular power to train your mind this way?
Not really. That's why I'm under many research programs so that they can try to find out.
Tell me, Vernon, could anyone do this?
There is a possibility that they could, but I wouldn't advise anyone to go out and do anything like this unless they really knew what they were doing. Because believe me, they could really get hurt.
It seems that one can block out pain. But as to why Vernon's feet didn't burn, that remains the mystery. We have come to Drexel University, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because of the work being done here in experimental physics. We wanted to see whether or not psychical energy could be observed under laboratory conditions. This is Bill Edson, professor and head of physics and atmospheric sciences at Drexel. Dr. Edson, would you describe the work in progress?
We are currently testing a young lady, Miss Karen Getzlaff, who is purported to be able to bend laser beams, light beams, with psychic energy. We have worked for several weeks to set up a tightly controlled situation, and she is currently in the room next door. You can see her on the video monitor here. This is taken with a low light level TV camera. The laser apparatus is right in this region. She is just about a foot or so from it. We have placed instrumentation all around this region to determine that she is not physically bumping or interacting with the beam in any other ways. For example, on this chart recorder, we are recording the output of a very sensitive accelerometer, which can determine whether the beam has been bumped in the slightest way. My colleagues, Jordan McClay and Barbara Conaway, are here monitoring these other chart recorders. This one is recording the light intensity of our detector system, and this one the airflow in the region right around the laser. And we have two more monitors over here, temperature and the laser head itself, and also the output of our detector system. Now, to demonstrate how sensitive some of this instrumentation is, I'd like to ask Karen to do a couple of tests. Karen, could you please interrupt the light beam now slowly back and forth as we did before? Now, she is passing her hand physically through the light beam. You can see the flash when the laser hits her finger. And you can also see here the very large deflections. These are flying clear off scale. So there she's deflecting it 3 times. She put her hand through the beam. And you get very large scale deflections here when that happens.
Are you ready?
Okay, Karen. How about rocking with no juice? She's going to rock back and forth now, which is her standard approach. But she will not try to affect the beam.
Move, please.
Move, Jordan. Yeah, right in the chart. There we go. And you see the chart is fairly flat. There's some little bumps in it, but nothing very striking. But you do see on the airflow meter is jumping back and forth a bit indicating the motion of the air, because she is moving, as you can see. She's swaying back and forth.
And here, this indicates that the laser is also moving slightly due to the air motion.
But there's no bumping of the laser. That thing would really bounce.
Okay. She's starting to crank now.
Okay, now she's starting to affect the beam.
Well, she's not trying to.
Yeah.
See, right.
In other words, she can't stop.
She can't stop it.
Go ahead, Karen, crank up. Really sock it to it. Okay. Here's where you see the change. Big change right there.
Now you see the charge is no longer just these little wiggles. We're getting some rather large swings now.
So here she's affecting the amount of light that reaches our final detection system. It's changing as she rocks.
And it correlates very nicely with the back and forth motion that she does. Not every time, but most of the time it's a very tight correlation.
Why don't you call it out, Karen?
Now.
So she can call
It's a very good correlation.
Now.
The temperature effect is showing here
Okay.
on this chart.
As soon as she started to juice up and affect the laser, we get this periodic temperature variation in the temperature, or at least in the output of that probe.
But it wasn't happening here. It was not periodic, but she was rocking.
This is a very interesting phenomenon, that when she rocks back and forth without affecting the beam, we don't see any variation in the laser detection. However, when she starts affecting the beam, the temperature probe seems to vary rather quickly back and forth. We don't know why yet. This is a new effect just observed. These large variations that we see at this point in the amount of laser light that we detect seem not to be due to any known physical or mechanical interaction in the control room. The results are repeatable. They work essentially every time. The only explanation that we have at this time is that it's Karen Getzler doing it. As physicists, we get interested in new physical theories. There is a physical theory that's been around for some years now, for which I don't believe there's any very sound experimental evidence as yet, which indicates that empty space is full of energy. But it's in a random kind of way that allows us not to detect it in any very easy way. Now, it may be that Karen Getzler and others who have demonstrated supernormal sort of powers have found a way to tap or manipulate that energy field. I don't know for sure. We think that this is a definite possibility, and as physicists, I think this is an unknown that should be explored.
The man you are about to see, Mr. Bloxham, has performed 400 cases of what he calls regression. The subject under hypnosis appears to be able to recall a prior life.
Concentrate on my two fingers and breathe completely in, completely out. So tired. Your eyes are so tired, so heavy as lead.
This woman, let us call her Janet, is about to experience a return to a time far back, to the year 1190, when she was a woman named Rebecca, married to a man named Joseph. She will give a remarkable, very detailed account of a massacre of Jews in 12th century England.
And between Pentecost and Passover, pestilence visited the city. 200 Christians died. No Jews died, and they blame us. There was a man called Maybelline. He hates us. They all hate us. Benjamin has told us that his father was killed in London. So many awful things have happened. And what they will do to us and our children.
Yes.
We will have to leave.
Rebecca described the flight of the Jewish community, chased by a mob of Christians. She and her family ran for their lives.
Somewhere must be safe. Children. Take the children. the children safe. They started to ram the gates. We were all just inside, and some people started to kill their own children rather than let them get their children. And we took shelter in a Christian church outside the big copper gate.
Yes.
The big copper gate of York. We can hear the soldiers. And hear the soldiers coming nearer. Perhaps they'll pass us. Perhaps they'll pass us. Pass us. Oh God, they've entered the church. And they're coming down. And they're coming down. And no, not Rachel, no. No, don't take her, don't. They're going to kill her. No, they've taken Rachel. They've taken Rachel. No.
Keeping still. You comfortable?
Tight.
It's all right, dear.
Tight.
What's the matter, darling?
Tight.
Shall I wake you up?
Tight.
You're all right. Now, just relax, dear.
Did it happen? Or is it just a fantasy induced under hypnosis? We went to York and found that there had been a massacre. March in the year 1190. The entire Jewish community, some 150 men, women, and children, was slaughtered precisely as described by Rebecca. The 3 medieval churches in York were searched for the crypt, where Rebecca and her family had hidden, but no sign could be found of either the cellar or the crypt. Wondering if Rebecca was inaccurate in other details, we took all the tapes to the historical reader at York University, historian Barry Dobson. We asked Dobson about a Christian named Maybelline.
It is quite well known from a variety of sources, and particularly from the most informative chronicler of the Great Massacre of 1190 of the Jews in York, a man called William of Newborough, that a certain Richard de Malbys, not Maybelline, but Malbys, was indeed the ringleader, according to William of Newborough, the arch-conspirator.
We wondered how accessible the historical facts of the York Massacre might have been to Janet.
And there have, of course, been some quite learned accounts of it here and there in local historical societies and so on. Not, I would have thought, generally accessible except to the professional historian.
From York, we went to Oxford to consult the eminent psychiatrist, Anthony Storr.
Well, I think that the most likely explanation for this kind of thing is what's called cryptomnesia. That is, that you have forgotten what you've read, seen, or heard, and there have been many well-authenticated instances of that in psychiatric history. I think there's no doubt that you can summon back, under hypnosis especially, and also with electrical stimulation of the brain, pictures and memories which you've no idea you've got, that you couldn't possibly summon consciously. Therefore, you can summon memories from the past which had to all intents and purposes been lost. I think there's no doubt about that experimentally.
Shortly after, Janet's regression was taped. One of the workmen converting St. Mary's into a museum lifted a slab, and there it was, a crypt. So what are we to make of this incredible phenomenon? What Rebecca saw, did it actually happen? Or did Janet create a historical fantasy, embroidered with details that she may have read or heard? Or is it possible that there is a genetic memory similar to the one that determines the shape of one's entire physical being, that contains residues of the past, memories of other lives lost somewhere within the infinitely complex labyrinth of the mind? Did we witness, under hypnosis, a regression to a prior life? Dowsing is an age-old art primarily used to locate bodies of water that lie beneath the surface of the earth. According to Newton's law, every body attracts every other body in the universe with an equal and opposite force. How then does the dowser's fragile rod differentiate between the masses of earth and rock that surround the water and the water itself? Therein lies the mystery. We are in England at a construction site in Maidenhead, and with us is Mr. Brian Cutler, one of England's busiest architects, who, despite the sophistication of his profession, nonetheless employs a dowser.
Yes, I have employed a dowser since I met Wing Commander Beaton some 7 years ago, when I happened to be discussing a problem that existed in one of my sites at Bristol. Basically, there was a water level of so high, this being the ground floor level of the shop, and all the ducts within the celling area were filled with water. I then spent the whole of that day with Wing Commander Beaton, and at the end of the time, all that we had was a brass stud in the ground. And he said, well, if you drill at that particular spot, down to a depth of some 10 foot 9 inches, we would come across an underground stream. The water from this stream was the basic cause of the flooding within this shop. Furthermore, he then suggested that if we drilled directly vertically below the stream, we would come at a depth of about 29 foot 3 inches. We would come across a dry underground cavern in the limestone. I had to go back to London and convince my clients that it was well worthwhile spending the thousands of pounds necessary to arrange for a rig and to do this work. Anyway, I managed to convince them, and 3 weeks later, they proceeded to drill down to 29 foot, and more or less bang on the predicted depth, we hit this cavern. And more or less, in front of one's eyes, the water table level that was at the floor height of the ground floor of the shop began to recede and drop, and eventually vanished through the bottom of the lift pit. And hence, we had no more problems.
Wing Commander Beaton, how long have you been dowsing?
About 8 years. I've known about it for 25, but I've been doing it professionally for about 8 years now.
How do you do it?
It's done with the mind. It's a sixth sense, and it's a product of the thought more than anything else.
Can anyone dowse?
Yes, I believe so. It is a part of the heritage of man. It needs understanding and needs training.
We are in Rome, at the Alphonsian Academy of the Superior Institute of Moral Theology, a part of the Pontifical Lateran University in Rome. For centuries, the Catholic Church, like all organized religions, has decreed that all its priests abide by the letter of the dogma, as if these tenets were to remain unchanged for all time. It told its priests what to preach. It asked them to accept in blind faith the miracles recorded in the Bible. Inside the Alphonsian Academy is Redemptorist Father Andreas Resch, who is also a teacher. Father, what do you teach?
I teach clinical psychology and paranormology.
What is paranormology?
It covers the paraphysical phenomena as levitation, the parasomatic phenomena as paranormal healing, the parapsychological phenomena as telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, and finally the paraspiritual phenomena as the big question of the survival of bodily death.
Father, who do you teach?
I teach priests.
Does your teaching represent a break with the past? A change in the position of the Church?
Yes, because before the Church gave commandments in saying you can believe this and the other not in the paranormal field. Now the Church gives information about the whole paranormal field and in saying what science has investigated already. So the people have to make their own mind. The investigation of the unknown brings us, as it was always in the history of the science, new ideas, new perspectives of our understanding of human beings and their interrelation with the environment.
As you heard, the church is in the throes of change. Today there is a great wind of spiritual inquiry blowing over the world as people everywhere ask with sharpening urgency, who am I? Why am I here? To what end? And all the churches, all religions find themselves responding to this inquiry. Luis Gasparetto, who lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil, is a psychic painter. He is also a practicing psychologist. With him is Alan Newman and Roy Ascott, Dean of the College of the Art Institute of San Francisco. Gasparetto claims that as many as 30 great artists paint their canvases through him.
A psychic painter is defined here as a medium whose body is ostensibly used by departed spirit artists to continue their painting on the earthly plane.
I can read that. That's from
That's Renoir.
How do you do this?
I really don't do anything. The incarnates around me do. They touch my hands and use for do these things that you see. It is
has this been going on?
For 14 years. I started when I had 13 years old. And until today, they usually work with me once or twice a week. And I already have 4,000 pictures with me.
Have you ever seen the great artist?
Yes. Sometimes when I am alone in a room, I can see and talk with them.
What is the meaning of what you can do for us?
Well, these incarnates around me, they say that they want to prove that they continue alive, and more, their personality continuing alive, and they work, they can do things. And another thing is that they can use our sensibility for express that they are alive. They can communicate. The message is that the life is eternity.
Was there any particular either sketch or painting that struck you?
Well, I suppose what we're really looking at is a process of, what interested me was seeing the process of someone triggering or allowing to release something inside of himself and flow with it and just pour it all out and let it all come through. Clearly, there was a control there, and some sort of internal control. I guess I was struck more by the flow that was continuous. So I did get the sense of someone who was, his eyes were closed, sometimes looking away from the picture, who was trying to reach for, or something within him, whatever, was trying to reach for a general gestalt, a general configuration, which changed in part from drawing to drawing. I think it's important for us to examine quite closely the sort of behavior that we were seeing here, to try to recognize that there are other kinds of possibilities for generating images. So that's what really interests me and what you're looking at here, the fact that you are looking at this, and the fact that many other people are looking at this within the context of art and seeing it as appropriate to look at. I mean, I personally wouldn't be approaching this to look at some sort of proof of something, whatever. Nor, frankly, am I looking at it to see masterpieces or great works of art. But it's the process which is going on, which I think is interesting. And that's something that we might explore a great deal more, I think, and many people are. Ever since, well, I suppose ever since Cubism, ever since Picasso opened up spaces and solids and objects and made them interpenetrate and mixed up time and space and so forth. The situation has been open for artists to explore all kinds of routes outside the formal ones of the canvas up there, and I am absolutely in control of the situation. I guess if the pounding was a surprise, it was simply the sense that the artist was trying to remove himself from the activity and allow other kinds of forces or other kinds of streams of energy or whatever to enter into him, or to come from some source deep down in there. I don't know whether it's outer space or deep inner space that we're looking at.
Though one may doubt that discarnate spirits manifest themselves through Luis Gasparetto, we must consider the severely handicapped. This is the director, Mr. Donald Selwyn.
In this room, we train severely or multiply handicapped people to use special types of office equipment and tools so that they can perform quickly enough to be employed. I'd like to introduce Mr. Albert D. Benedictus, a 30-year-old man born with cerebral palsy, who's been employed full-time for the past 12 years as a principal clerk with a health department. He will show us now how he's able to type with this special remote control typewriter, which uses a pointer with a magnet, which he will move around to each letter, and he's able to do this far faster than he could type on an ordinary typewriter. Would you show us, Al, how you do that? Mr. D. Benedictus is also using an electronic speech clarifier that was developed by this institute in 1972. This is the sensor which picks up his voice, which is difficult to understand, as with many cerebral palsied and also with many Parkinson's patients. And the processor and reproducer is worn in the pocket of his jacket. And the voice actually emanates from here, processed by a little microcomputer and special filters. And could you tell us about your